Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the State of the Bird for the second quarter of 2022. This one's titled GTK 4, Are We There Yet? You'll understand as we get going. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. So what is the State of the Bird? It's a presentation that describes what's been going on in the project. Due to our current plan of trying to get Pidgin 3 out the door and everything like that, it's very hard to keep track of where we are, and especially from an outsider point of view, right? So we decided a while ago to start doing these quarterly so that we can give people a snapshot of what's going on so they don't have to even try to attempt to, keep track of the day-to-day stuff. And aside from that, it's an interactive event for the community. What I mean by that is, as you can see on your screen right now, at any time during this presentation, you can type !ask and a question, and it'll be queued up for a Q&A session that we do after I get through the presentation. One of the other things to note about this presentation is, even though it is live on Twitch, I'm not really going to be interacting with chat very much because I'm trying to focus on the presentation. And that also means that notifications for follows, subs and stuff, those are all turned off right now. So, all right, anyways, let's keep on moving. Let's talk about the retrospective. So what happened in the past 3 months? So this covers the time from April 1st until June 30th. So our last State of the Bird was on April 28th. I just realized I messed that up and nobody caught it in the proofread. Our last Day of the Bird was on April 28th, 2022. And our next one is tentatively scheduled for October 21st, 2022. Again, we do these quarterly. I used to put the tentative schedule to the first Thursday after the first Thursday of the quarter, but it turns out we never actually get it on that date. We usually got it done about the third Thursday, so that's why we just default to the third Thursday now. So, yep. So again, we'll be doing this again next in October. Keep an eye on all the normal places where I announce it. See. So, all right. So first thing, let's go through some metrics. So for review requests in Q1, we opened 164, closed 153, and we had 5 total contributors. In Q2, we had 135 open pull requests, 148 closed, and 7 contributors. So this isn't really meant to measure momentum or anything, just to kind of give you an idea of what's going on, right? So while we were down a little bit of open pull requests or review requests, whatever you want to call them, we actually ended up closing more this quarter, or we closed more this quarter than we opened, right? And that's always a good thing, right? So we don't necessarily get all of them every quarter that get opened. So yeah, there's some overlap, but it's all right. And you'll see we had 2 more contributors this month too, right? So that's a good sign too. All right, moving on. When it comes to issues and our issue tracker, in Q1 there was 32 opened issues and we closed 125. One of the reasons why that number was so high in Q1 was Recanaro, or John Bailey, went through and closed a ton of stuff that just was not applicable at all anymore. There's still like 2,500 open issues or something, so there's still lots of triage to go. But we're slowly churning through it. We're getting there. But in Q2, we opened 27 and we closed 14. So that's more on par with what we normally look like. I should maybe graph these out at some point, but we'll see. One of the reasons why we're still so high on open issues is I've been trying to use it more like a to-do list, and just so people have a better idea, and so that I myself don't lose track of where I am. I've only probably been using it about 50% of the time. But there was a new thing we designed via an issue as a design issue, which we'll be getting into more later, that we actually use the issue tracker for to create as an epic and do subtasks for all of it in there. There's still some pieces that need to be finished for that, but I don't have issues for that either now that I think about it. But yeah, so just other things to keep track of. For commits, Q1, Pidgin 2 saw 4 commits, Pidgin 3 saw 100 commits, G plugin saw 10 commits, and Talk 2 saw 4. In Q2, Pidgin 2 saw 39 commits. That is mostly because we released 2.14.10, excuse me, on June 2nd, which is during this time. And then we also released 2.14.9 during the State of the Bird. And I think a lot of that work happened after the 1st of April. So it wouldn't have counted in the metrics, right? Because metrics are from the bounds of the quarter, not when we actually do. But Pidgin 3, we saw 82 commits. G plugin, we saw 2 commits, and Talkatoo, we saw 0. G plugin, for those of you who don't know, is our new plugin system. It is a standalone library that can be used in any glib-based application, and it uses geometric introspection to provide language loaders. Currently, it supports native plugins, so C, C++, Vala, probably Rust, although no one's actually built a Rust plugin yet. And then it also has built-in loaders for Perl, Python, and Lua. And there's always the potential for more. Talkatoo is our next generation conversation widgets. So like we ended up having to rewrite the input. So in Pidgin 2, the chat history and the chat input are a widget we call GTK IMHTML. And for numerous reasons, we stopped using that in Pidgin 3 and moved to a WebKit web view. But then WebKit got deprecated, or WebKit 1 got deprecated, and there's no WebKit 2 port for Windows, so we had to basically write our own. So Talkatoo is basically a reimagining of GTK IMHTML, written in a more maintainable and componentized way. During Q1, we updated Talkatoo to GTK 4. So we haven't actually had any reason to go in and change anything in it yet. That'll probably change in the future, but that's where we are right now. So our GTK 4 branch. So we decided, I think in about February, just kind of on a whim, to start working on GTK 4 because we knew we had to get to it sooner or later. So it was like, let's just try to get to it. So at the end of Q1, we had, so the metrics we keep track of in the GTK 4 branch are how many files are failed, how many warnings we currently have, and how many errors we currently have. Now, the thing is, all of these numbers are very volatile because if we fix a file that failed to compile, there's a good chance we're going to get more warnings and errors, not less, right? Because like if something includes a file that currently fails to compile and we fix that failure, well, now that other file could cascade into other things. But anyways, so at the end of Q1, we had 34 failed files, 286 warnings, and 811 errors. And now at the end of Q2, we have 18 failed files, 195 warnings, and 416 errors. I know it still sounds like a lot, but I joked around, and there's a comment in here about this too, where one of the problems with our code base is most of our GTK code, even though we moved Pidgin 3 to GTK 3 years ago, it's still really GTK 2 code masquerading as GTK 3. And one of the big issues here is that there's been lots of deprecations and lots of things removed and completely changed in GTK 4, which has meant we've had to really overhaul a lot of stuff. But we'll get to more of that in a little bit. All right, so infrastructure. Unfortunately, our email is still running at Wixtel. I was hoping to get to it at the end of June, and it just never happened. But Richard has still been gracious enough to keep it running there. I've got what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to end up setting a date. I have to pick it exactly yet. It's probably going to be sometime in August, where we're just going to make this changeover. Because we have decided that we are not going to integrate the GNU Mailman authentication with our JetBrains hub. Right now, basically nobody uses the mailing lists. Like if you look at our archives, you just see that I posted a release thing and there's like 2 emails to support a month. So it's just really not worth the effort to tie it into the SSO, the single sign-on. So we're just gonna skip that part, and then people who want to sign up for the email can just sign up for the email. We'll go for right. So what we're gonna end up doing, we're gonna end up picking a date. We're gonna import everything from, or we're basically gonna shut down the existing GNU Mailman as we import everything into the new one and get that up and running, and then done with it. So that's the plan. Like I said, probably sometime in August. I need to actually pick a date. But then we'll get that done and we can finally tear down that old. On top of that, DigitalOcean has renewed their sponsorship for the project for the next year. For those who don't know, DigitalOcean has a program for sauce, open source software support, where as an open source project, you can ask them for credits to use their infrastructure. So they provide enough sponsorship for us or enough credits so that we can run a full blown Kubernetes cluster. And that's where all of our infrastructure. Aside from the email's on just a separate droplet machine. Um, but one of the reasons we have so much infrastructure is we're not your typical open source project, right? The By today's standards, typical open source project is generally a library, right? Like aside from the big heavy hitters, right? We've got like Firefox, Chromium, GIMP, Krita, Office, etc. Right? Those are all end user applications, just like us, right? Um, and so like we don't want our issue tracker on GitHub because end users aren't usually familiar with GitHub. Like technical end users, sure, but like your general, like our target audience aren't GitHub users, right? So we need our own setup, we need our own infrastructure to go with and deal with that. So yeah. All right, next up, for Pidgin 2, we released 2.14.10 on June 2nd. That release went pretty well. We covered that in the other release announcements. I'm not going to go through every item in the changelog here. But aside from that, Google Talk was officially shut down. Google Talk was Google's first chat implementation. It used XMPP under the hood. They announced a while ago that June 15th they were going to be cutting off both us as Pidgin and Gajim. They actually turned it off a couple days later, but that forced a lot of our users to migrate to Purple Google Chat. Purple Google Chat is a protocol plugin written by Ian Robb. It works, it's effective. The problem is the login solution sucks. You're not typically supposed to, like, in typical fashion, right? Google doesn't necessarily want third-party clients on their network. So like the only way to authenticate is to use OAuth. That is the same OAuth that the iOS version of Google Hangouts uses. And since we don't currently have any browser or HTML render or anything in Pidgin 2, this causes a problem. So what ends up happening is when the protocol plugin tries to log you on, it actually tells your operating system to open a page in a web browser. You go and do your OAuth log, and then we have instructions for you how to pull the OAuth code out of the dev tools. Yeah, it's not pretty. So anyways, I started writing in OAuth plugin, but I haven't finished it. I'm getting stuck on some stupid issues. But if anybody would be interested in either helping me out, um, the specific issues have to deal with GIO channel stuff. But aside from that, it's like the infrastructure of it works. I'm just stuck on some IO stuff. Part of the problem is the GIO channel stuff is not documented. Let's go with that. Um, and I'm really struggling to find an example and a use case on how to make it actually work the way I need it. But aside from that, I have all the other kinks worked out. There's a few more things we have to do, or so I should back a little bit more. We're doing with that plugin is there's a library out there on GitHub called WebView. It's really just a C++ class that, depending on your platform, will either use GTK or WebKit to GTK on or back up. It'll use called Edge View, the Edge web browser view. On Windows, it'll use WebKit on Mac, and it will use GTK or WebKit to GTK on any other platform. So there's a little tweaking we have to do to the library yet to finish support for cookies and stuff, because that's one of the main things we need to do. So on the Linux side, I already wrote the piece for it, but we have to write it for the Edge View and the WebKit stuff. It's not difficult. We have code for it. I just haven't done it yet because I haven't tried to compile over there. I wanted to get it working on Linux first, completely, and then bring it over to Windows and Mac, and then write those specific pieces. We're just not there yet because I'm stuck on the IPC, but that's okay. All right, so aside from that, a lot of you know that our Transifex, like most of our infrastructure and just stuff in general, had been kind of bit rotting. Transifex, for those of you that don't know, is a website where projects, including open source projects, can basically crowdsource translations for their program. So what happens is before, like a week before the release or something, we go ahead and upload the newest or the latest version of the pod file, the template for translations. And then the translators at their leisure will go ahead and update their translations. And then before the release or as part of the release process, I will download all of those translations and they will get committed into the repository and they become part of the release. The problem with that is no one's actually really interacted with their translators in at least 6 years, at least since I took over, and probably before that, right? I took over in January of 2016, so 6.5 years. So I reached out to all of them recently, because currently we have something like, so the Transifex has coordinators, so like you can have multiple people translating the same language, and the coordinator will work with everybody to make that happen. Then there's also reviewers that'll make sure that stuff is actually correct. And then there's translators. So right now we have something like 67 coordinators, 5 reviewers, and 154 translators. And I'm gonna guess a lot of those people aren't active. So one of the things I asked when I reached out to them was, please respond to this announcement. And if you don't in the next 30 days, I'm going to remove you from the project. Like, there's nothing personal here. If you want to be added back and you just didn't see the message, by all means, just let me know and I will add you back, right? This is literally us just trying to figure out who's still here and who's not, right? Because we don't have any good tools or tracking to know when people last updated translation or anything on or up, whatever. Yeah, just updated a translation. So, that's just to go forward. We got to figure out what's holding us back, right? That's the idea. All right, so next up, Pidgin 3. So this list is kind of condensed because, as you can tell from the GTK 4 branch metrics, we did a lot of GTK. But we'll touch on that a little bit. So, like, I've tried to just capture the highlights, but we'll go a little bit more here. So the first thing is we ported all the preferences to GTK 4, all the preference widgets. So a while back, it might have actually been during this pull request. I don't exactly remember. Or did I say pull request during this quarter? We separated out each page in the preferences into their own widget. So like the interface, the conversation, credential providers, all that. Each one of those pages are now its own widget. That just makes it easier to maintain. There's less spaghetti code. There's less stuff intermingled, right? It's just everything's nice and componentized, and we're good. So all of those got ported to GTK 4. Next up, we converted plugin actions to Gmenu and Gaction. So the plugin actions, like in Pidgin 2, if you go to the tools menu, or so say you load the IdleMaker plugin in Pidgin 2, what IdleMaker will do is it'll add a menu option to plugins at the very bottom. It'll say IdleMaker, and then it'll say set idle time or unset idle time, right? Actually, I think there's a set idle time for, I don't remember exactly, right? So that was done, like that way functioned, but we wanted to make it a little bit more robust, right? So in GTK 4, we can't, the GTK menu widgets and that entire family of widgets, GTK menu item, they've been removed. Your main way of building menus in GTK 4 is via actually a glib class called gmenu. And gmenu just basically holds the definition for the menu. And then each menu item can point to an action, which are also a glib option. So that what that means is instead of returning a G list of pairs of names and function callbacks, which is what it used to be, we can go ahead and any UI, the UIs will have to, interpret the G menu and build it into their menu and stuff, which it's a little annoying, but it's not a big deal. And then so they'll go through and do all of that, and then just call the G action, which is the callback, right? It's functionally the same thing as we had before. Just this is a lot more structured way, and one of the very cool things about it is it means that plugins can now have submenus. So in particular, stuff like XMPP, where like if you're an admin on a network, you get just a ginormous list of protocol actions when we get to those ones. we can now drop those all under a sub menu, right? So we can be like admin, send server message and that kind of stuff, right? Rather than like check idle time or get server info, which is a public option, right? So that's one of the very cool things. We did the plugin actions kind of first to get an idea how it would feel, because there's some issues between the protocol stuff and other. But we'll get to that. I probably should put that option next. Aside from that, we updated the plugins dialog, the GTK4 one that Gplugin provides. Gplugin right now, I believe, still, yeah, we have GTK3 and GTK4 widgets plugin, right? So we just updated the plugin dialog to point to the GTK4 one. It's not really much to it. It's fully defined in Gplugin, and we just that directly in Pidgin. That may change in the future. We're still struggling and figuring out how we're going to handle configuration, correct abstraction for that, but we're getting there. It's not a huge deal right now, but it's going to be something we have to tackle soon. Aside from that, we ported many widgets and utility functions to GTK4. I don't even know what dialogues to begin. It's been a lot of stuff. There's a bunch of widgets that we actually recently decided we're going to remove and no longer need. Got ported to GTK4. I can't even remember what other dialogues. We also updated all the context menus in the buddy list to GTK4, and just, I don't know, there's been a lot of GTK4. As you saw, our numbers of warnings on the GTK4 branch basically halved, right? And the warnings went down by 33%, and the errors halved, right? So we fixed a lot of stuff. I don't remember all of it. I started listing it here, and then I realized if I list every single thing, I'm gonna have 3 pages of stuff we converted to GTK4. So let's just try to cover it at a high level. Aside from that, we also added a protocol actions interface. This is similar to the plugin action interface, except it's a bit more complicated. Like I mentioned before, we started with plugin actions because it was easy, right? There's a one-to-one mapping of a plugin has a menu and an action, whereas the protocol actions is a one-to-many, right? So in the accounts menu, when an account is enabled, you see the account in the bottom of the accounts menu. That submenu there is the account, or is the protocol actions for the account. We've run into a bunch of funny stuff with that, but we think we've got that mostly worked out now. Mostly because the way GTK application API implements menu loading wasn't quite what we expected. It basically returns a singleton where we thought it was returning new instances when we were looking up menus. And so we had to write a copy function, stuff like that. So we have the copy function done. We actually finished that last week, this week, I don't remember. So the protocol action stuff should be coming soon, which will be cool because right now we'll touch more on this. We're going to do a demo later and we'll show some of that. But currently the conversation list window has 2 menu bars. One is the new current menu, and the second one is the old and busted one. And the old and busted one still has an accounts menu there because we don't have the protocol actions ported to the. So once that's done, we'll be able to ditch that menu item and just continue going. So aside from that, we continued simplifying and importing the buddy list and to turn it into a proper widget. So a couple of years ago, we were trying to figure out how we're going to handle the UI operation structures. UI ops are how the core tells the UI to do certain things, like show the buddy list, tell them that somebody has added you to your friend list, stuff like that, right? And one of the ways we decided to do this, or we tried to do this, was with the buddy list. We decided to make it an abstract class because the buddy list has to track additional data as well as have custom implementation, function implementations, right? But the problem with that is in GObject, you can't have multi-parent inheritancy. So we basically can't make the Pidgin contact list a widget as long as it is still subclassing purple buddy list. So we need to work through that, but what we're doing right now is we're not so much worried on the UI operation part of this, but we're trying to take the actual list part of it, the part that actually shows the list and all of your contacts and stuff like that. And we're trying to turn that into a proper widget, because number one, we need to. just to make things work right and work better, especially in the GTA 4 world. And then once we finish the GTA 4 stuff, we'll probably pull apart that structure and move to the new implementation of G interfaces for the UI operation stuff. The main reason we were using G interfaces for that stuff is that you can write UIs in other languages. Where before you could maybe do it, but you'd have to manually manage those structures via some foreign function interface or something. Where now you can just like in Python, for example, you can just implement a G interface by adding methods to your class, right? Just a normal Python method. So that's one of the other reasons why we want to get that. So, all right. And then finally, the big thing is we designed and implemented a new notification API. So Pidgin and Game over the years have had a number of ways to notify you of things. So like connection errors would show up as a little mini dialogue in the bottom of the contact list or the buddy list, whatever you want to call it. And then friend requests and friend requests in general would show up in another mini dialogue in the buddy list. So like you could have one of those and then a connection error underneath it and stuff. But then like previously we used to have like mail or like new mail stuff would like show up in like the menu bar part of it, stuff like that. And then other things were done haphazardly, like we would pop up a dialogue for like a server message on IRC and XMPP and stuff, and all that really sucked. But the biggest problem with it was it was very inconsistent. We're going to get notified, but the bigger part was all of that state of those most of that state of the notifications was kept in the contact list. And for those of you that don't know, we are currently working on trying to merge the contact list into the conversation window to get us down to essentially a single page application or a single window application, but we're still going to allow you to pull conversations out to additional windows and stuff, but we're trying to stop having a separate window just for the and since all that state was kept in the list and wouldn't be doable to put into multiple conversation windows, we basically had to write the notification API. It's funny, one of our contributors was like, why are you working on this? Shouldn't you be working on GTK 4 stuff? And I'm like, actually, this is GTK 4 stuff. And they're like, huh? I'm like, well, so the thing is, to move the contact list into the conversation window and to move it to GTK, I have to deal with the state problem of all of these. So I have to create the notification API so that the state can be kept track of in libpurple, and then we can just create new GTK4 widgets. So yeah, it's the typical Pidgin problem where it's like 3 or 4 layers deep of I've got to go 3 or 4 layers deep to actually accomplish what I'm trying to do, right? All right, next up, setbacks. 1 second. So as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the code that still needs converting, essentially GTK2 code, actually could maybe be GTK1S code. I don't know. I wasn't here for game when it was GTK 1.2. But it's masquerading as GTK3 code, and it takes forever to convert. So the big things that we're still dealing with here are the account editor. Number of things still left in the conversation window, mostly related to menu stuff and typing notifications. And then the big problem yet is the contact list or buddy list. And those are the big things that need lots of work and are probably going to take up most of the next quarter, but we'll see. Aside from that, we still have some work to do with Google OSS Fuzz still. I say still because this has been on here for a year now. Again, similar to the email, I need to pick a date and just sit down and finish this. Google OSS Fuzz is a fuzzing utility, which will basically, we write essentially unit tests to test like network facing or public facing code. And then Google will just basically generate random data to pass into them, and it'll look for bugs and then tell us when it finds a bug. This is important because you can actually find a lot of bugs in your software by doing this stuff. But so the issues here are we made some updates like a year ago. But I never actually sent a pull request in to get them finished. So basically, I just need to sit down, rebase, finish these up, get the pull request in, and then we'll go from there. And just still, again, similar to the email, which is next up, I just need to pick a date and get it done. Likewise, same deal with the email. We talked about that earlier, where probably going to pick a date sometime in August and just sit down, get it done off this list. The one of the other jokes about the setbacks is apparently I don't ever look at the setbacks list here, so I'm gonna have to create some tickets or something like that to help me keep track of these, make sure stuff is done. But all right. So aside from that, I still haven't been able to dedicate as much time as I'd like to working on Pidgin. Truth be told, I probably only get to work on Pidgin 3 or 4 days a week. Um, just other responsibilities, stuff like that, the contract work, that kind of stuff. Everything cuts into it. Um, so while we are definitely moving ahead, we're definitely not moving full steam ahead. But we're still making progress, right? We're still doing that, so that's good. All right. Aside from that, the OAuth plugin's taking forever because GIO streams are not documented well. Like I said, if anybody's familiar with that and they want to reach out, let me know and we there. So, all right. Next, let's talk about a demo here. Ugh. How did I do this? Oh, that's how I did this last time. Okay, so we're gonna do this. So I already have Pidgin 3 running. Okay, so this is Pidgin 3. The contact list window is the same right now. Remember, this window is going to go away. We currently have loaded a demo protocol plugin. We created this 2 quarters ago, I think. And the idea is to make it easier to have static data, static trustable data for screenshots and stuff like that. But it also allows us to demo things, right? So like the protocol action stuff, the pull request for it actually adds account option or protocol actions for the demo protocol plugin to do stuff like forcing disconnects and stuff like that. So that we can actually, actually just we have something that's easy to test with rather than like, all right, I need to cause a connection error, which I'll show you how to do in a minute. Like, right, like we just hit a button rather than have to come up with some creative way. But yeah, so like I said before, the accounts menu here, this one here is so like I said, that one's in a pull request. That's why there's nothing here. So like the accounts menu here, this is all the old GTK menu based API implementation, whereas this one is the new G menu stuff. But we don't have any of the actions here, right? So we're missing the actions. Once we get the actions done, we can tear down this menu, and that'll be good to go. The buddies menu is now just down to sort buddies. So the sort option for the buddy list here, or for the contact list. But everything else here is in the new G menu stuff. One of the other reasons why we really wanted to push for this is the G menu stuff is actually implementedly properly on Mac OS. So if anybody's ever run Pidgin 2 on Mac, you'll know that most Macintosh applications, your menu is at the top of the screen in the main menu bar, right? Whereas Pidgin 2, all the menus are in each window, like you would expect to see it on Windows or most Linuxes, aside from Unity and other managers do that. But so by moving to this new menu stuff, we get the added benefit of on Mac OS, we actually look a lot more like a native Mac application. All right, so that pretty much covers the main stuff here. This is, I should mention, this is the GTK3 branch, because like I said, the GTK4 branch has 400 some odd compiler errors yet, so we obviously can't build that. I mean, we can build it, but it's not successful. So everything here is still GTK3. The divergence in the branch, there isn't much. I try to rebase it whenever we do anything big in the GTK3 branch, just to make sure everything's good. But so the main deal here is the new conversation window. So let's say, or we'll just do it this way. I'll send myself an IM or yeah. So you get your typical instant message, right? Now you'll notice one of the things is the conversation window has multiple levels. This is a tree, right? So our conversations show up here. The conversation window needs a lot of polish. Like, let's be perfectly clear, it is not great right now. It is barely functional, but it is functional. You'll notice that even though this is an IM, we have a topic and a user list. Um, the topic was probably, well, this should be changed in the way it is. This is just the way we have it right now. In Pidgin 2, we make a distinction on how we render an IM versus a chat, and I'm trying to get away from that. Number one, it's a more complex code. Number two, it's just difficult to deal with. But number three, there's there's a lot more in common with these two than there is different, right? So like we could automatically set the topic to like their status message, right? And that could be up here or something like that, right? But more fun than that is so right now this is just a separate panel. Right now only shows a room list. But at some point what I plan to do is um to make this like an interface that where plugins can dump stuff in, but more importantly, like if you want to get like the user's info or something, we can have that pop up here. Um when this is a chat room, this could show details about the conversation itself, right? Um or Yeah, right. There's more examples I can't think of right now, but the idea is, we're gonna make this more informative than just a user list, and make it so that you can actually hide it and then bring it back and stuff like that. So still lots of work to do there, lots of stuff to go, and so on. But yeah, so by default, if you don't have a conversations, just shows that. And like I said, at some point we're gonna have it so that you can pull the conversation out and create another window, whatever, it's fine. Oh, and just to give you an idea of what it looks like if you have multiple IMs open, this is what it looks like right now. Um, so right now we're still using GTK tree view for this widget. The reason for that is we will be moving to a GTK list box once we can compile on GTK 4. The problem with the list box is you may have guessed, you can only render lists in list box. However, in GTK 4, they created the GTK list, or the list for the GTK list box are backed by a glist model. In GTK 4, they created a GTK list model tree or list tree model. I don't remember the name. I can't imagine why I can't remember it. It's not like it's difficult to mix list and tree, same name. But they implemented a tree-based structure that implements the glist model interface. So we will be moving to that, but we can't do that till we get to. So for now, it's still just GTK. But yeah, so this works like you would expect. I think that arrows do still work right now. But yeah, so as you'll notice, there's before we get to that, we also move the status widget up to the top here. We removed the message editing part of this, so just flip your status directly and you go. And the reason for that is most chat networks, protocols, whatever you want to call them, that support status messages now. Status messages are basically independent of your actual status, right? So like in the Pidgin world, and that was designed on top of AIM, Yahoo, MSN, etc., right? Like if you had a status message of like doing homework or something, right, but you were available, if you like idled and then went auto away, then you typically, so like your idle would keep your message, but your auto away would move to whatever your auto away message is, and it wouldn't like just keep old message, right? Whereas the modern, the I guess we'll call it modern chat network, they all just keep your message until you set it independently, right? They're independent, but adjacent. So that's kind of what we're going for, because that's basically what most of the other networks do now. So just got to update for the times. All right. Anyways, so the new thing is the notification API. Now the notification API is all based in libpurple, and this is just a rendition of it, right? So you'll see here, I have an account that I purposely made it throw a connection error because there is no DNS name for IRC, library, chat, ASDF, right? That just doesn't exist. So what you can do is you can go ahead and hit rename. Oh, lovely. I should have tested that. Dangerous demos. There we go. But the idea is, you can interact with everything right here and go from there. So let's do this real quick. Show you an example that I know works. If it doesn't work, I'm gonna feel great about that one too. So In my Pidgin 2 instance, I just connected that XMPP account with that resource, so that resource got disabled, right? So that notification just came up, and we got disconnected because of it saying a resource. Now, most users won't understand resource conflict. That's okay. Most IRC or most XMPP servers don't. Well, if you don't set a resource, it will generate a random one for you. Um, and in this case, I'm very explicitly setting both. So this is both of these connection errors used to show up in the contact list. This one in particular used to become an aggregate because back in the day, AIM, Yahoo, MSN, uh, IRC, and as you can see, XMPP, same resource, all used to disconnect you if you connected from somewhere else, right? Actually, no, not so much IRC. IRC stops you from connecting; it doesn't disconnect instance unless you ghost it. Um, right. So we used to have an aggregate that would look to see if you had been signed on from somewhere else, and then we would drop a connection error that said, you've been signed on from somewhere else, or these accounts have been signed on somewhere else. Would you like to reconnect them? Right. So the idea was like if you had all the same accounts on like your laptop and your desktop, and then like you go somewhere, you open up your laptop, you connect everything. It's going to disconnect everything on your desktop, right? So like everything's now connected to where you are. Then you close your laptop, you leave, you get back home, you have one button to click to put it back on. Again, like I was just mentioning, how we have to update for the times, that kind of thing. Um, Not many protocols have this issue anymore, right? Where you get disconnected all the time. So we got rid of that aggregate. So now we just show the direct one for the protocols themselves. But yeah, so what we can do now is we can hit re-enable, and you're not going to see it over there, but come on, did it go? Yeah, okay, so it did connect. I'm just not seeing on Pidgin 2 that I got disconnected. I did, but the notification didn't update, right? Still just showing the aggregate. But yeah, whatever, right? So but yeah, so you can see the account's back online now, right? That's the one where I've grim at imfreedom.org on there. And yeah, so that's the notification API. The notification API is also going to have support for generic notifications. So stuff like the server announcements on XMPP and IRC. When since LiberaChat has become a thing, they have started using wall ops, which is what a server announcement is called, the command for a server announcement on IRC. They've started using wall ops to just let people know about stuff happening on the network. And in Pidgin 2, that pops up a dialogue that's easily dismissible if you're already typing and stuff like that, right? So then people are like, well, what was that window? I don't know, right? And we're like, it was probably a wall ops, right? Excuse me. So once we have the general notification widgets done, we just have to build them. There's nothing to it. There's nothing pressing to do it right now. They'll just pop up in this list like anything else. Then you'll be able to read them, and then just click the button and get rid of them, right? And then you're good to go. Likewise, notifications will also keep track of, once we have better support for it, mentions, right? So like right now, we just mark a tab as blue. Or in Pidgin 2, we mark a tab as blue. The text becomes blue, and the message where you are notified gets like a dark yellow color. The plan is all of those mentions will show up here in this pane, and they will have a link that will take you to the conversation itself and to the message, so you can go and read the context. Because I don't know about all of you, but when like I get up in the morning and I go and look at my chat stuff and I see I've been mentioned a number of times, and I have no way to go to those mentions except to manually scroll, it really drives me nuts, especially in heavy traffic channels, right? Because you're just like, well, just clear this because I'm never going to find the message, right? So being able to do that all right here will be very cool. Also, when we have reaction support, that's when you can tag a message with an emoji. Popular in Slack, Discord, Telegram, and I'm forgetting what else. Those will all show up here too. Slack, for example, has a mentions and a notification tab, and that's kind of where we're going with the notifications. Or no, it's mentions and mentions and they call it mentions and reactions, right? So we're just adding more to it, right? Our connection errors, all that stuff's all going to be in one spot. Remember, I was talking earlier about how we have multiple spots where notifications appear, dialogues in the menu bar, and then those two notification widgets in the buddy list. Now they're all just going funneled into this one spot. So there will be counters and stuff on all of these at some point that'll say like, two notifications, something like that. We're just not doing that right now because, like I said, we're going to rewrite this entire widget once we get to GTA 4. So there's not really an incentive to do it right now. All it's going to do is if we do it now means we have to do it as we're moving to GTA 4. Whereas if we don't do it now, we can implement it after we're compiling on GTA. So yeah, that about covers the demo. What are our next steps? So, things we'll be working on between now and the next day of the bird. We're going to continue the convergence of the contact list and the conversation window. That's the whole making the list itself its own widget. Finish getting authorization requests and the friend request stuff moved over. I have most of that done actually, except the pull request got a little big, so I'm trying to figure out how to make it smaller. Especially since the way I did it, I have to update Finch at the time. And we haven't actually updated Finch for the notification API at all yet. So that's a potential. But we're going to continue porting to GTA 4. I was optimistic and thought we might be able to get to GTA 4 by this state of the bird. Unfortunately, we didn't. But I'm going to be optimistic and hope that by the next day of the bird, we're to GTA 4. Because I really don't want to be porting to GTA 4 for over a year. Well, that'll be 9 months at that point. But the sooner we get to that, the sooner or the better overall. One of the main reasons we're moving to GTA 4, aside from the fact that GTA 3 is mostly in maintenance mode now, is that we can build GTA 4 100% from source, which means as we're using Mason can build other projects as part of your own build. So that means we'll be able to we'll be able to build fully we'll be able to fully build Windows and Mac versions without having to have like a magic directory of dependence, right? Because everything's going to be defined as a subproject Mason. So while it's going to suck the first time you do it, you'll be able to compile all of Windows and Mac on in the same build tree. So there's just no problem there. Like I said, it's gonna suck as you're doing your first ever build. There's a couple of things that Mason might be able to help there with that we haven't investigated yet. But basically, we can build as part of just the normal Pidgin build without having to give any additional instructions. But we can take Mason and a C compiler and build Pidgin. Right? Notice I didn't say any other dependencies. Because the Mason subproject stuff can go and download glib, GTK, Cairo, GStreamer, all that stuff, and build all of it as part of our build. So it's probably going to take half an hour or more the very first time until we look at some of the other tooling that can help with that. Excuse me, but the benefit there is, or one of the benefits there is, if you've ever tried to compile a plugin for Pidgin on Windows, or if you ever tried to compile Pidgin for Windows, you know how much of a pain it is trying to get your build environment set up. Whereas what I said just now is you need a compiler and Mason. Well, sorry, a compiler, Mason, and on Windows you could technically use Visual, right? That's all you need to build. Like I said, the first build will suck. It's going to take a long time, but then after that you're fine, right? Because everything will be cached. You'll be good to go. The other benefit is this means that we will control our entire dependency tree across all platforms. So we're going to use that whole sub process, build all of our dependency stuff for Windows, Mac, as well as app image on Linux and Flatpaks on Linux too. We might do snaps. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe we'll let somebody else. But that means that the universal installers across all three major operating systems. I'm not trying to forget about the BSDs, but they're Linux has more market share than them. All of them will have the exact same dependencies across everything, right? So one of the number one, we'll also be able to update those dependencies at any time because we're just building everything as part of our subtree, or as part of our own build. But number two, we're not going to run into the problem like we are on Pidgin 2 right now, where we can't move GTK 2. We can't move our GTK version forward because of some bugs a long time ago that somebody knew about, and the person that had that knowledge is no longer reachable. And more importantly, nobody knows how we built the dependency directory anymore. We just don't know how to rebuild it, which is one of the main reasons why we can't update GTK 2 on Pidgin 2. We're stuck, right? We could try to do it with some weird hackery stuff, but it's just like, is it worth it at this point? Like, let's just keep pushing towards the new stuff where we have full control and we can update and we'll be fine, right? Instead of trying to hack away at the old stuff. It sucks, but yeah. All right, anyways, finally, for real this time, we're going to get the email to Snow on DigitalOcean again. Like I said, I'm going to pick a date sometime in August, and that is going to be the date I either have it done or I'm doing it. We'll go from there. So yeah, all right. Do questions? Yep. Okay. That. Then add on. Oh, got it. Okay. So, looks like we only have a few questions. But let's. So our first question is. Oh, there it goes. Oh, that's right. I don't see it on my screen now. Neos asks, is there a L10, that's localization plan for Pidgin 3? If there is, how's it going? For localization, I assume you mean translation as well. That's going to be ran on Transifex, just like the Pidgin 2 stuff is. I haven't updated a pot file for it yet because everything's still in so much flux that there hasn't really been a right. Like we can, but like one of the bigger problems is, generally speaking, it's helpful for translators to be able to actually run the program to get a feel for it. And like I'll put it, to be perfectly blunt, I don't run Pidgin 3 as my daily driver right now. There's just too much in flux, too much stuff that's broken and that's in transition for it to be useful to anybody. But probably after we get the GTK4 branch merged and we start getting some polish on things, then we'll definitely start uploading that to Transifex so that people can start translating. So yeah. Hope that answered your question. If not, just go ahead and ask any follow-ups via the same method. All right, next up. The MCS core. MCS core ask, on Windows, will Pidgin 3 target 64-bit? Yes. There's not really a reason for us to do a 32-bit build on Windows that I'm aware of. As we're building it right now on Windows, I have well, actually, my build whole thing is broken. I have to look at it. But right now we're building against MSys2. But like I said, once we get to GTK4 and we're building all our dependencies, it doesn't matter what we build under. We can build under command. Yeah, just by default will most likely be targeting 64-bit. We already don't support Windows XP, and I think, well, XP did have a 64-bit version, but 64-bit has been pretty common in Windows, at least 8 and 10, right? I don't know about Vista, and I think we technically won't work on Vista anymore. I don't know. Which versions of Windows we support really depends on what versions of GTK or what versions of Windows GTK support. And I don't think GTK 4 is really targeting even Vista, but I don't know. I haven't looked. But yeah. So hopefully that answers your question. But like, are we planning on adding support for XP or stuff around that era? No, it is a waste of our time. If somebody wants to come in and help make it work, sure. But I'm not gonna tie our hands up trying to keep that supported because that's not even supported by, the upstream maintainers anymore. So it's just a pain for us to try to do anything. All right. Next up, 295 asks, am I the only Pidgin dev who's streaming? I believe so. I know QLogic has tinkered with streaming a few times, but I don't know that he's ever streamed, like, done a full-blown stream. Yeah. So, and me and QLogic are the main Pidgin devs right now. We have some CPWs in training. CPW stands for Crazy Patch Writer. We have two people I need to promote the CPW, but I'm trying to get at least some sort of a definition behind CPW before I just assign it. Traditionally, there's never been a definition of it. Long story short, we have multiple tiers of community, right? So you've got your users, you got people that just like do some stuff. Then you got crazy patch writers who basically like a contributor will come through and like give a patch here and there, right? Whereas a crazy patch writer like understands the code base well enough, like where you don't have to like you can give them a little bit of guidance, like, hey, can you go look at this? And they come back with a patch fixing a problem or something, right? Or better yet, they find the problem before I know about it, and then they give me a patch, right? So that's what a crazy patch writer is. There's not a whole lot of a distinction between a crazy patch writer and a developer anymore. One of the big things that was a difference back in the day between becoming a crazy patch writer and a developer on the project was developers had full commit access. We've gotten away from full commit access because number one, we want everything to go through a review, so that everybody has a good idea of what's going into the code base, and so that we can set some standards for the code, right? So like even though I'm the lead developer and QLogic has been with the project for 14 years as well, right? We still don't just YOLO commit. Occasionally I will for like a change log or something, but I make typos all the time too. So let's put it through a pull request so that we can get the typos fixed, right? But like so we treat the YOLO committing and pushing as a very special thing, whereas the back in the day we didn't do that, right? It was just like, oh hey, I wrote this new thing, commit, push, right? So those days are gone. So the difference between CPU and developer or CPW and developer are really just experience, I think, right? Experience with the project. But like I said, I want to get that all documented so that's more clear, so people don't feel slighted or something like that. And that's just another thing on my ever growing. So, all right. Again, if I didn't fully answer your question, please just use ask again. And yeah. All right. Then Cheat95 asks, pulling auth tokens out of dev tools, that's for sure keeps non-hackers and developers out of the software. Yes. No, I wouldn't say it's a feature. I mean, like we do write the software for ourselves, right? But at the same time, we want it to be useful to others as well, right? And that's yeah. I mean, I know you're joking with the kappa, but just to kind of clear it up, it's like this kind of expresses how I feel about Pidgin 2 as well, right? So like Pidgin 2 was great in its heyday, but nowadays it feels like a giant hack, right? And I don't mean that in a good way or in a bad way, but I mean like Ian Robb has been busting his butt trying to keep the project relevant by writing new protocol plugins and stuff like that. But like he has been like slowed down every step of the way. Like when it comes to there's no OAuth support, right? Or there's no message history, or there's no reactions, or there's no real emoji support, right? There's no inline image support. I mean, technically there's inline image support, but the inline image support that's there is based on AIM direct messages back from the 90s and early 2000s, right? Like one of the first things I did when I wrote Talkatoo was I added support for pasting images, right? I don't know about you all, but like I paste a lot of memes because paste a lot of memes, right? Or even screenshots. So while it's not fully functional in Pidgin 3 yet, you can just straight up paste an image into the input box and it just works. And then like on top of that, we didn't really like because Pidgin / game are so old. There's the caveat that like back in the day, there was no such thing as logging, right? There was no such thing as flies, message editing, reaction, even linking to specific messages, right? It just didn't exist. So the problem is the Pidgin 2 API that goes all the way back to game, when a message comes in, we send it to a logger function to basically take the verbatim message and dump it out to a log. And then goes to the UI who writes it to the conversation window, and then it's lost, right? We don't know where it is in the conversation window anymore. We don't know how to address it in the log anymore because back then messages didn't even have IDs, so that you couldn't find them. So one of the other things that's been implemented in the Pidgin 3, well, specifically Purple 3, but then Pidgin 3 and Talkatoo, is messages are now no longer just a string, right? Because they were just a string, and there was an author that was a separate field. There is now a full-blown message class, which includes the message, the content type, the author, the timestamp, the protocol, a message ID, and then it even has a collection of attachments. So like you could attach multiple images to it, or maybe a binary file or something, right? And all of that is so that we can just like go and drop that in a database and then rehydrate it, bring it back in, and show it in the conversation history. And as we're getting there, that's gonna help with lots of things. Whereas like the modern protocol support in Pidgin 2, any of that stuff working is a hack, a total hack. So another good example of this is, so a while ago I wrote a proof of concept protocol plugin for Twitch, and I tried to add emoji support. Pidgin 2 cannot scale to Twitch emojis. It just can't, because the custom emoji support was originally designed and built for MSN, and it really only supports about 100 custom emojis per conversation. And even a moderately busy Twitch channel, you will exhaust that in a couple minutes. And then if I try to expand that limit, what ends up happening is Pidgin 2 tries to automatically turn things into smileys. So it'll read the entire message one at a time and then dig through a giant data structure, checking each character to see if it's the start of an emoji, and then, walk through and go from there. That obviously doesn't scale, especially not to Twitch. So if you get into a very fast Twitch channel, you just watch Pidgin 2 crawl if I turn on the emoji stuff. So the emoji stuff is still a big problem we haven't solved for Pidgin 3 yet, just because the scale of emojis is very different today than what it was then. But more specifically, our issues with emojis are we're not just supporting Twitch, right? We need to be able to scale to the full Unicode emoji set, as well as Twitch, as well as Slack, as well as Discord. Now keep in mind that each Slack instance allows your team to have something, at least 1,000 custom emojis, right? So if you're on, I don't know, say 5 Slacks, there's 5,000 emojis, plus Discord, which is however many you have across the entire Discord network, plus the regular emoji set, and we're already over 10,000 emojis. Obviously we want that to be fast, and we know that we only have to look up the ones for that specific conversation, right? So typically just Unicode and Discord, or Unicode and that Slack instance. But we don't want to store we don't want to have to restore those across. We don't want to have to double store that data. Like say you have 2 Discord accounts connected, we don't want to have to load the main Discord stuff twice, right? We want to load it once and then load in the additional ones we have, right? We want a single data store that removes duplication. And that's where the problem gets hard. It's essentially a big data problem at this point. We did a worst case scenario test a while ago, with our current database design for it, where we loaded just all the Twitch emojis, and our database was like 4 gigs. So we're looking to use a SQLite database so that we can allow you to do fuzzy matching on the emojis. But yeah, just loading all of the Twitch emojis caused the database to be about 4 gigs, and I don't think that included the actual image. Just having to do the I forget what they're called, the ways to make fuzzy matching work in SQLite. It's nuts, absolutely nuts. So yeah. All right, next up. Neos asks, can I talk a little about HTKeeper, the stats or something? Functional. So those of you who don't know, HTKeeper is a Mercurial version control system hosting solution. That makes it sound so complicated, and it's actually very, very simple. So Pidgin, unlike most open source projects, does not use Git. We use a version control tool called Mercurial. It is not compatible with Git. I'll say me personally, because I don't want to put words in anybody else's mouth. I personally prefer Mercurial over Git. I'm not going to get into why. If you ask the question, I'm just going to strike it down and not answer it today. Um, and for back when I took over the project in 20, we were trying to stop hosting a bunch of stuff on our own because it just eats into our development time and stuff like that, right? Um, so we ended up going and moving all of our repositories to Bitbucket because Bitbucket supported Mercurial. Anyways, a year or two after that, I don't remember exactly, Mercurial decided it wasn't worth their time to support Mercurial. Okay, sucks, but whatever. So I went around trying to find a solution for it, and ultimately ended up creating my own. So HG Keeper is a very small Go program that includes an SSH server implementation, as well as a fast CGI server. So what it does is it loads HG Web, that's the built-in Mercurial web interface. It presents that on via fast CGI, and then it allows you, so you can browse the code and everything like that, and then it allows you to push code via SSH. And then it controls authentication with an API called Caspin. You can find a link to it, and so that's a link to the actual HG Keeper repository that's running, that's hosted in HG Keeper. That's our official instance of HG Keeper. I just pasted in chat. It's got I am freedom Keeper for anybody catching this later. Excuse me. But yeah, so it works. The only known caveat is, well, the only known caveats I should say is it doesn't support Go projects because I don't have the Go meta tags in there yet because I just haven't figured out a good way to do it yet. And I also haven't looked at it in a long. Aside from that, it could definitely use some UX help. I've thrown around the idea at some point of possibly, instead of just exposing HG Web, putting a different HTTP server or different front end in front of it. But I'm not a front end developer, nor do I have the time to become one and then write it. But that is an option that could be on the table. Excuse me. But HTKeeper can be run in a number of ways. It was designed to be ran in a container first, but we have excuse me. But we have managed to integrate it with OpenSSH in multiple ways. So it can be run in daemon mode with OpenSSH, or it can be ran in a run once mode with OpenSSH. Or when somebody connects in, you can ask HTKeeper if this key is available and all that, and then HTKeeper will tell them if they can proceed or not, and then it'll serve the repository to them and stuff like that. The daemon mode is similar. It uses the same semantics. It just works. So like you can run you're an HTKeeper in a container that's always running that will provide the HG web interface as well, whereas the run once interface won't. And then you can use your existing OpenSSH server, configure it to talk to HTKeeper to figure out if the HG user. So yeah. That didn't answer your questions. Again, please feel free to ask clarifying questions. All right, next up, Ivanhoe asks, when will a secret project be revealed? I didn't tell you personally. So there's been a secret project, me and at least one other member of the stream community here, have been working on for a little while. It's related to Pidgin development. It is not actually part of Pidgin. But it will be revealed probably to subscribers first, but not until it's functional. So we're getting closer to that, but I get a couple hours in every couple weeks on it. So it's gonna be, but we'll see. So all right, well, we'll give you all a second to see if we have any more questions. But if I think I'll call it here. All right, we're just gonna stop the questions here, if that is okay with you all. And oh, I guess that's. I thought there was one more thing in here. Crap, there's something I was gonna mention. All right. But anyways, so I hope this was enlightening for everybody. And if you have any further questions or stuff, feel free to hit me up on IRC, Discord, or whatever, or join us here for streams. Yeah. So, all right. Thank you everybody for coming by tonight, and until next time, adios.